All right, let's get right into it. So, let's talk about how do you know when you're on the self improvement journey? Lately, something I've begun to recognize is you will know when you're properly on the right path and you're talking about this self improvement stuff. Once you recognize that, there's this peace and comfort knowing, okay, I'm doing all the right things. If your environment changes because of that, those people just weren't meant to be there. And that's okay. See, one of the biggest ways you're gonna know you're on the self improvement journey is when you recognize that your standards rise, and as a consequence, your circle is going to get stronger. I mean, smaller. Excuse me, smaller. Your circle will get smaller. Your standards and vibration get higher. Your circle gets smaller as a consequence. See, what a lot of people don't understand is that if you hang around with people that are low vibrational, you are essentially saying subconsciously, these are my standards. I'm okay being around this. And you'll get to a point where you recognize these people, they just don't align with me anymore. And because of that, you will drift apart. That's going to be, and unfortunately, it's something you can't skip. You're going to have to go through that phase where that person, your bro, whatever, you just have to recognize these people, they don't align with the current version of me. And if you want to get to that next step or goal self, whatever, if you want to get to that next point, you have to cut that person off. And I mean actually cut them off. Like you won't interact with them because you know if you do, you're going backward. That's how serious the journey gets. See, a lot of us we like to downplay, oh, it's fine, it's just one meal. Or oh, it's fine, I'll just hang out with her one time and I won't do it anymore. So you'll do it that one time, it'll turn to another time and another time. And you have this constant cycle and you stay stuck in this loop, but you don't go forward. See, in order to go forward, you have to sacrifice a lot, honestly. That's why you have to be okay being alone. And I really mean like okay being alone. Because when you get to some point you recognize like, yeah, it's just gonna be me, like for a couple of months. You're not really gonna hit anyone up. If they hit you up, cool, but you're not gonna hit them up because gotta prioritize the mission first. See, another way you know you're on the self improvement journey is when you just become okay being alone. You're okay waking up early, going to bed early. When these things become part of your identity, you know you're properly on the path and you just have to keep going. You have to adjust it because, I'm rereading Atomic Habits. Great book, by the way. Highly recommend. But anyone struggling with a habit, you're struggling with a habit because your mindset and identity hasn't shifted yet. See, the reason it's hard for you to work out is you view yourself separate from working out. It's not something you view yourself that you do. To me, I just work out. This is something I do. I don't miss workouts. I hit my protein goal. I eat proper meals. That's just something I do. There's no friction. There's no delay. It's a part of me. It's not even a diet. It's a lifestyle. When you understand that, like truly in your mind, that reflects externally in how you carry yourself, your meals, not missing workouts. It's going to reflect that way. And what I've learned recently is I was always confused. What does it mean to detach? I was like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, what are they talking about? But now that you become so aware and you actually you're doing the right things, you become detached from the outcome because now you know the outcome's coming, whether you want to or not. See, all the things we want, they don't really care that we want those things. It's more so it's a consequence really of your vibration and of your internal state. So if your internal state is good, as a consequence, things externally have to work out. You know, for me, I think everything began to change when I really like understood that. Yeah, this health shit's actually it's way more important than I thought. Even though I've been preaching it, everyone that knows me knows I always preach health, gym, all this shit. But really, last month, it took 5-6 years of preparation for it to click like truly in my soul and consciousness that yeah, this shit's important. And since that change, I can say it feels like I'm the luckiest I've ever been And as I continue along this path, it just feels like I get more and more lucky, which is really crazy. And I'll say that's another way too. If things just start working out, find some money here or there, people are saying hi to you more. It's a lot of like really subtle ways that you're on this path and you're following it, properly. Especially when you master lust too, where you don't need that chick, you don't have to hit her up, start seeing women pass, just objects and, objectifying them. When you're healed from all that stuff, you can, you begin the flow. You just move with the flow. You become like a waterbender, from Avatar. You just move with the flow. Or if anyone studies Taoism, the Tao, just moving with the Tao. You flow with things as they are. And I'll say another big sign too, and this is something because it took me a while to get to this point, but I was the most like 1 + 1 = 2 type person, and we're all dudes, right? So I think you guys understand what I mean by that. But when you develop that other ability, I always explain it as hockey. It's like observation hockey, and when that's seen One Piece, when you can feel things out. It's hard to explain, but you can feel things out long before you see it reflect externally, like in the world. But another consequence of that ability is you can view things as they are. And this is something I'm like, wow, I've been doing this for years. You view people as they are, not what they say, not even what they're doing, as they are in the present. And when you view things like that, a lot of things get clearer. Like you can actually see people's like true intent, their true nature. You know if they're really about it, if they're not, if they're good, if they're not good for you. These things become very clear when you like really walk this path. But it's going to come with some sacrifice. I've lost, I think, what, 4 or 5, quote unquote friends. But I would say that they were actual friends because at one point they were genuinely like some of the closest people I knew. But as you outgrow more and more people, you just have to cease contact. It is what it is. And I think a lot of you listening, you're not prepared for that part of the journey. Anyone that says they are, you're not because you haven't gone through it. But every time these things happen to me, it's like your ability to tolerate them will get easier, but you're still shocked because things that it's almost as if you should have seen it, but then you don't. And you're like, well, what the hell? How did I not see that? How did I not see these traits in that person? Like, I can't believe my standards were that low that I dated that person, or boom, I did that action, or whatever, 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 yada, yada, yada. But that's the good thing too. I think the earlier you start, the better. The earlier you start taking your health serious, working out, doing all these things, you can go through this stuff earlier. So when you're older, you've already gone through it. You've been through the ringer. You have the reps, underneath your belt, and you have that spiritual alignment, that spiritual center that keeps you grounded when the world tries to pull you, drag you. Because people, well, let me tell you guys, if you have coworkers, every day is a test, especially with food, because every day you have to decide to delay gratification, avoid pleasure. That's why getting lean is so important, and nutrition, because if you can master gluttony, there's nothing else nothing else. I can't think of anything harder other than, of course, lust. That's why someone that, if you're honest, are if you mastered your lust and your gluttony, you were quite you actually become the anime character because I can't think how powerful a person. There's probably I'm probably less than 1% population that has both of those things. There might be one, but someone that truly has both those things mastered is probably Buddha level, honestly, because that's something that's really, really rare. But as you continue on this journey, you want to get to that point, but you recognize, oh, it's not impossible. Whatever the Buddha did, even Christ, Jesus, if you're into the whole spirituality, you're not separate from God. You understand that you can do those things too. Because if you really think about all the mentors, Isaac Newton, Nikola Tesla, all these people would have called them crazy, oh, that's not possible. And then they end up doing it. So the ability to fly or like throw kamehamehas and shit, Rasen shurikens, it's really only a matter of time. That's another thing too. I'll say self-permanent. It gives you that childlike wonder back because when your mind and body are in the ideal state, and it's almost scary. I can't, and that's another thing too. You guys have to understand that when you have excess body fat, you're not functioning at your true capability. And that's something I overlooked for the longest time. So I'm the best I've ever felt, but I'm also the leanest I've ever felt. But there's still much more levels because I might be between 14 to 18% body fat. So still a good amount of, body fat to lose before we get to 10%, but you just don't get as much joint issues. You have more energy. There's so many benefits to being lean, but are having a, objectively low body fat percentage compared to the average because like the average is like 30-40%. Man, that shit blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. But it actually motivated me more and more because I know the further I get, from the average body fat, the more highly I'll vibrate. And the more highly you vibrate as a consequence, things are just going to start going your way. And I think that might be the final level of detachment is when you start understanding that nothing actually you say matters. If you ask it, you'll get it, but it'll come as a consequence of your vibration, whether you want it or not. Like the money, the female attraction, the successful career, like those things, they come if your vibration's so high, if you're doing all the right things. Because the way I always explain alignment, it's like a tire rotation. If your tires are properly like aligned, or no, tire alignment, excuse me. When they're properly aligned, they'll last longer, but I think like they're like pointed like forward. So when you're aligned spiritually, the way I describe it, you get this invisible pull almost to just start doing things. And you just know like, okay, that's what I gotta do. Like, oh, that feels right. So because you're moving from the flow, like instead of ego, you don't have this resistance. There's not this friction. It doesn't feel forced. It just feels, very natural. It's why your health is so important too, because when you can eat foods from that state of consciousness where, okay, you just flow and you eat healthy foods, it's not difficult, but then you get heavily rewarded. See, what a lot of people don't get about this health stuff is you get rewarded for eating healthy. You get rewarded for delaying gratification. Yeah, you get the abs and the muscles and all that stuff, but the most important benefit is the vibration you get and just the higher set of standards. That's the most important thing because your body is just a reflection, of your standards or of your vibration, literally. Because your standards and vibration is essentially the same thing as I understand it now. But that's why I'm always stressing. These are things you have to think about. But the only way you're gonna have these thoughts is one, highly recommend record, do videos, don't do videos like this, but just get in front of a camera, talk, yap, meditate, of course, journal, but then really get comfortable being alone because only when you're truly comfortable being alone can you have these thoughts and audit yourself and really look at reality, you know, for what it is. Because when you can see reality for what it is, I think that's where the clarity comes from and almost a peace. Because you stop seeing the illusions of everything around you and you see things as they are, see people how they are, see there's a lot of stuff people don't understand about this spirituality stuff. And you get to a point where like a person's just not there. So, you're not going to tell them that stuff. It's like if anyone see One Piece, remember when Rayleigh was like, oh yeah, I can tell you guys what the One Piece is. But Luffy was like, no, because, he wants to keep the surprise and the adventure. But even if he told them what the One Piece was right there, they wouldn't be able to change anything because they weren't strong enough. They didn't vibrate highly enough. That's why they had to train. Luffy had to train on the island with Rayleigh. So you're gonna get to a point where it makes you. It's not even from ego. You'll know if someone is at your vibration, and if they're not, like okay, the time's not ready for them yet. That's okay. The eventually the day will come, but now is not the time. That's why the most important thing with this journey is you gotta fix yourself. You have to save yourself first because when you do that, other people, get in shape first, then other people will ask you for health advice. They'll see you doing healthy things, for a real long period of time. Then they will ask you health questions. That's also made me detach from like my expectations of other people too. So you just kind of do your own thing, and you're okay with that. Because at the end of the day, everyone's gonna do Everyone's a reflection of God, right? So they're gonna do what they want and manifest the things they want. If it doesn't align with you, that's fine. You can just cut them off. You don't have to interact with them. But you become almost, okay with it. That's not to say you're better than, anyone else. You're objectively your standards are higher, which is fine because not everyone's gonna have, because then the bar is that's what I noticed too. The bar is different, the actual bar, because I would argue the bar is, hitting your approaching goal every day, the 10,000 steps, at least 3 to 5 weightlifting sessions. I think that's a good standard. SR2, of course, if you're not, for procreation. I would believe that should be a set standard that every dude should follow because a lot of problems will go away if you're doing all those things. But most people they don't believe that, so they're not gonna do it. But you have to do. That's the only way to get to what you have to do. You just have to go through it, try enough things, risk some things. You have to go through all these things. That's gonna be the only way you get to this point. Because I promise you, all roads will lead to this. Whether you think so or not, that's fine right now. But you take your health seriously because I'd rather you take your health seriously now before you have a 40-inch waist, diabetic, insulin resistance, just completely cooked. The earlier you start, the better. But when you start and you're on the journey, you start getting healthier. People start respecting you more. Things just start working out. And like, no, it came because you increased your standards. But when you increase your standards, that's going to reflect in you looking better, externally. Because we really downplay the importance of looks, and I really don't get it, woman, and we all downplay it. Some guys want the baddest chick alive, and they're double my weight. They're probably 5'6", and they might be double my weight. And you guys don't understand how crazy that is. You guys don't know. That's the thing too. Not saying you have to have like a 4 year like doctor or whatever, but once you understand some basic biochemistry, the whole calories in, calories out, protein, amino acids, like once you understand that stuff somewhat basically, you realize like, wow, it's really impressive. That bitch weighs that much. You're like, holy shit. So they have the capability to do great things because getting to that weight is objectively it's impressive. Not in a good way, but actually no, you could even argue it is in a good way because whether you wanted to eat or not, you still decided to show up and you still decided to eat. That's why you're at that weight. Now, if you can channel that into the gym or a career, behavior, anything else, boom, you're going to be good. That's why you have to just continue. The most important thing is, remember, some Aaron Yeager shit, you got to keep moving forward, whatever it takes. Where people start calling you crazy, obsessed, you're doing something right, but you got to keep moving forward on some Aaron Yeager shit. Just don't start the rumbling, please. But, stay locked in, stay on the grind, find your purpose, and yeah, let's stay locked. Till the next one.